We also do go over it in parent meetings with the parents.
That you can't do because you have a written agreement.
Right.
And anything that's outside of that agreement, unless it's referenced in the agreement, is inadmissible because the intention of it is to somehow change or modify the terms of your written contract. Okay, so in what month did the defendant's son start the program?
In August of 2021.
And it runs in 2 semesters. And when was he terminated?
He was terminated in February of 2022.
You were in a semester program?
Yes.
So am I correct that the first 2 episodes of cheating were in the first semester?
Yes.
When?
The first one was early in November. It happened to be the 3rd week of our 2nd semester. The next one was a couple of weeks later, in the same month of November.
Okay, so the semester had started.
Mm-hmm. Second semester.
Yes. And on what day in February was he terminated?
He was terminated on February 24th, I believe. Yes.
And when you terminated, the defendant, I assume, paid the entire semester's tuition for the 2nd semester.
The 2nd semester, he signed the installment agreement, which is what you have there.
This is a payment agreement.
Right. That's it. He agreed to pay in installments.
No. It says, I agree to pay all charges by due dates according to the payment plan. I don't have a signed payment plan from anybody. Do you have one?
I'm sorry. That's what we use for our signed payment plan.
Well, you should use something different. This is not a payment plan. This says he will pay according to a payment plan. I'm looking for the payment plan. You pay by the month, you pay by the semester. How do you pay?
It's a semesterly fee that's broken into 4 payments, so they don't have to pay it all up front.
Okay.
They can choose to, but...
And so when was the defendant's last payment?
They paid through the semester.
Through what semester?
2nd semester.
Okay, so they paid in full.
Through the installment. So what happens is they agree to be automatically billed. And so every month, a certain amount comes out.
Just a second. So what you're saying is when they sign up, they give you authority to pull out from their bank.
Yes.
Whatever the tuition is for that month.
Right.
Okay. And according to your records, when was the last payment that you received for the defendant's son prior to terminating him?
Prior to terminating him, we received a payment in February.
And you terminated him on February 24th?
Yes.
How much was that payment?
It was, have it right here. You know what? I don't know.
$350 every
It's
month.
300, that's right. $350.
I know, I got charged the extra month, so I know the number.
Okay. So it was $350 that you paid the beginning of February, and he was there in February.
That is correct.
Okay. In what month did you dispute the charge?
Well,
No, not well. I said, in what month?
May. I only realized in May she's been charging.
Just a second.
He was plagiarized by teachers.
It was plagiarized by teachers.
He was given notice because he lied on a test by teacher, yeah? But it's not exactly what happened.
They're not in the business of expelling children. They're in the business of keeping children in school.
But
you really have to get this through your head.
Robin Slagle claims her customer, Jack McCurcheon, owes for tuition and administrative fees.
So you paid in February, and your son was there in February.
That is correct.
Did you pay in March?
It was taken out of my account without me knowing, but yes.
Is that $350?
That is correct.
And did you pay in April?
I did pay in April.
Okay. Now, the May payment, is the May payment the payment that you canceled?
No, on the May, I also paid for a May payment. Looking at my statements, I said, why are we paying for the child? He doesn't go to school anymore. And that's when I called them. And then I called my credit card company, explained to what happened. They said, we are going to charge the money back to your account. And that's when I kind of looked through paperwork. And I'm an immigrant in this country. I don't read really well. I can speak And my son, he's a young guy, and he knows exactly what it is, and that's what I brought him. I said, can you see, do we owe these people money? And if you guys allow it, I can have Alex to explain what here shows.
Just see it. He doesn't have to explain anything to me.
Okay.
I'm not new to the country, and I was legally trained, so I don't need your son. I assume you're not legally trained?
I am not.
To interpret something,
No,
a
just-
piece of paper. So now I will look at the piece of paper that you're relying on, but I want to tell you this, sir. I pay the tuition for a lot of people, a lot, because I have 13 grandchildren
Okay.
in school.
Okay.
I'll take that, Kevin. Thank you, I'm sorry. I know that if one of my kids or grandkids goes to school and gets expelled, and I've paid the tuition, because I'm not on a payment plan, parents send the bill directly. and so I pay the tuition, but I know if one of the kids in November, once I pay the tuition, gets caught cheating on a test or plagiarizing a paper, and he or she is dismissed from the school, they're not going to give me my tuition back, even though he's not in school. I'm not going to get the tuition back for that semester.
That's true.
That's what I'm telling you. I know that. So now I'm going to see what you want me to read that suggests that in this case, even though your son was terminated for cause from the school for cheating.
Dismissal versus termination is different.
No, it's not different at all. It's this exact same thing. Dismissed, terminated, expelled, all the same thing. If you look them up under synonyms for each other in the dictionary, you will find they're all the same. He was excised from the school because he cheated despite multiple warnings. So he was expelled from cause. I just want you to understand that. Did you go to college?
Currently enrolled.
Currently. Stand up. You look like a nice young man. Where do you go to school?
Cal Poly Pomona.
And who pays the tuition?
I do.
Now, what's your first name?
Alex.
Now, Alex, you do know that if you got expelled from college for cheating in the middle of a semester, you wouldn't get your tuition back for that semester. You do know that.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Well, that's what we're dealing with
Could
here.
I add something?
Sure.
Well, according to their honesty policy, they made a clear difference between dismissal and expulsion.
I'm going to look at it. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, so what you gave me now acknowledges that you received the refund policy. Thank you very much, because she wasn't able to prove that she gave it to you, but now you gave it to me, so I know you were given the refund policy when you enrolled your son in school.
So we weren't given, but it's something they have it on their website for you to.
Just a second. Well,
I
then you
didn't
look.
sign.
You don't have to sign. Then you looked at the website. You gave me this. Do you understand?
After
That's what
this
I mean.
happened,
Legal.
I went and tried to understand.
Well,
what
you should have
happened.
done it before.
Well, when
You were
I own a
perfectly
construction
capable of
company,
doing it
when
before.
I sign a contract, I sign and I explain everything.
You
and
just
people
told
get
me
copies.
5 minutes ago that you didn't sign any contract. Well, now you acknowledge that you signed the contract. I'm just reading this that you gave me.
A contract has to
Yes,
be
sir.
a complete contract. If
Just
there
a
is
second.
something.
For somebody who's, not here, not from this country, and doesn't understand things, you seem to understand things very well.
I know the contract has to be completed.
Oh,
so
well,
if I give
that's
it
very
some-
good. A lot of people don't know that.
So if I give a contract for a statement, then I say, go in my website to read about our refund policy. That's not part of the contract. That's their rules, no? I didn't sign refund policy.
You don't have to sign a refund policy. You just have to be aware of it.
If I don't know how to get into website or don't know.
You gave me the evidence.
But this
sir.
was done after everything done. I
I'm
looked
not
into
sure.
it. Okay?
You were certainly aware of how to do it, either before or after.
When I sign contract with someone, I disclose everything, and they initial, and they get copies. I get copies, and that's a legal bonding contract.
Good. What law school did you go to?
None.
Well, there are two things here, but the final piece here says the consequence for academic dishonesty or plagiarism is a score of 0 on the assignment and possibly dismissal from the class.
Okay.
So your son did that in the first semester at least twice. Repeated dishonesty can result in suspension or expulsion. Now you can stand up because your father says he doesn't understand everything. I think he understands everything just fine. But in case he wants to have you there. Now, When you were discussing this with your father, did you have any conversation with him that suggested to him that, you know, if I went to college and I cheated 3 times or 4 times or plagiarized a paper and I was kicked out of school, I wouldn't get my tuition back? Did you tell him that?
No, we had similar talks, but no, nothing on the school. We talked about, for instance, the signing contract for, let's say, a 1-year lease agreement to live somewhere, but if you breach the contract and they decide to kick you out, it's the same thing as expulsion. You're not required to finish the 1-year contract with them. You don't have to continue paying.
If they decide
What are you
to
kidding?
I am not. If you get evicted from a property, do you have to continue paying the entire year's lease?
Yeah. If
Not
you
familiar
breach
with that.
if you breach a lease, he or she can evict you. And yes, you will be responsible for the remainder of the lease.
Oh, I was unaware of that.
Yes, you will be responsible for the remainder of the lease. You have to understand, and your father has to understand, the reason that he was expelled is his fault. And the reason he was expelled had nothing to do with them. It had to do with your father, because you were put on notice that he was plagiarizing and cheating on tests. If what you're suggesting is the 3 times that your son was caught cheating were the only times he cheated, you're deluding yourself. He got caught 3 times. Because if these were the only 3 times that he cheated, he is the unluckiest person on the planet.
Robin Slagle has accused her customer, Jack McCurshian, of refusing to pay tuition. Jack claims he is not required to pay because his son was dismissed from her school.
You were put on notice, and instead of being more vigilant, the conduct continued. He lives in your house. How old is he?
14.
14. Well,
I want to ask about this plagiarizing thing, which it is, because remember, beginning you asked me that he was plagiarized by teachers, which I was not.
he was
agreeing.
plagiarized by teachers.
Like he was given notice because he lied on a test by teacher, yeah? But it's not exactly what happened.
Well, then you should
Matter
have,
of fact-
just a second, then you should have contested it, sir.
Well,
you should have contested it. Did you say?
If they decided they don't want him to be out of the school, they don't want him to be there,
no.
what do you do? I mean, you go
What do you
fight
do?
with them?
What do you do? You pay the tuition for that semester because that's your contractual obligation, and you tell your son, you better straighten up, and if I have to take you to a psychiatrist, if I have to take you to a therapist, if I have to find a more rigid school environment, I'm going to do that.
Well, he really didn't
You
cheat.
really have to get this through your head.
When it says cheating, last time he was expelled from school. Do we have a...
No, don't look at her.
That day he had an excellent score on his math, and his last test was his history, and he forgot to learn the history, and he did have a paper with him, but he did not cheat it. Actually, there is
Okay.
no proof he
All right.
cheated that day.
All right. They're not in the business of expelling children. They're in the business of keeping children in school. How many other students were expelled from the school the semester that this defendant's son was expelled?
0.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're in business of keeping children in school. How
I guess
many
my son
children?
was that bad for her to expel her.
She said they didn't expel any other children. I'm going to ask her, how many children were enrolled in the program at the same time the defendant's son was enrolled in the program?
Approximately 70, 75.
Okay, and of the 70 to 75 students, the only student expelled was the defendant's son.
Yes, ma'am.
That should tell you something, sir. Stop making excuses. Okay. I didn't tell you, he didn't look at the paper, he had it underneath him, but he didn't look at it. Well, plagiarizing, so he copied from somebody on a paper that was supposed to be original work, did it once, he did it twice. Do you understand your son has a problem?
Well, we all have problems.
No, I never had a problem being expelled from
perfect.
school, sir, for cheating. I never had a problem being expelled from school for cheating.
I have lied.
I have 5 children and 13 grandchildren. All have completed college, some professional school. None of them have ever been expelled for cheating. That's a lot of people.
Do you feel it's fair to expel a child from a school because of
Cheating?
cheating?
Absolutely. Not that I usually let people ask me questions, but the answer is Absolutely, because if 70 children are working hard to get good grades and studying and creating original works when they're supposed to create original works, and your son who's getting a 99 on a math test when he's been getting low scores on tests all of a sudden becomes a shining star one day, and it's a pattern, and then they find another cheat sheet under his bottom. That's something that suggests to the other 70 students that are trying to do the right thing, that it's okay to cheat. And so if you want to cheat on this test to get a 99, it's okay. You can't run a school where you permit kids to mingle with kids who are trying with kids who are cheating. So do I think it's fair? Absolutely. Okay, how much money was reversed by this bank?
$1,050 plus $45, a $15 fee per transaction.
$1,095. Okay, judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,095. Sir, your problem is not with the plaintiff. Your problem's with your son.
He's like all of us. He made a mistake. And
No, he didn't make one mistake. I'm going to tell you something. Honestly, I used to say when I was practicing in a different court that if criminals got caught the first time or every time that they committed a crime, they'd stop committing crimes. The problem is they commit a crime and they don't get caught. And then they commit another crime and they don't get caught. Then they commit the third crime and they get caught and they're brought to court. And their lawyer argues this is their first arrest. Not their first crime, because they can't argue that, but it's a first arrest. So if what you're suggesting is the 3 times that your son was caught cheating were the only times he cheated, you're deluding yourself. He got caught 3 times. Because if these were the only 3 times that he cheated, he is the unluckiest person on the planet. Okay, we're done here. 1095, judgment for the plaintiff.
Thank you, Your Honor.
This court is adjourned.
I felt the difference was between different wording, what it means as far as being expelled versus being like sent home.
I'm extremely pleased. This was totally a matter of honesty and integrity, and obviously it stems from the father down to the son.
But he explained that's the same word, and again, that's why you come to court, and she did what she had to do.
We have kids that try to cross the line, come close to that line, but as I mentioned, our instructors are pretty savvy and they're on it, and we can tell pretty much, so.
I am happy finally done. It's been a burden, it's been a stress, and hopefully it's done.
Cheaters never win.
So I think it's really important for the plaintiffs, as the runners of a homeschooling system or a schooling system, to have a better contract for the parents that are signing, especially with a payment plan option. There should be exhibits attached to the signature page, not just referencing, oh, we're agreeing that we read the policy from the website. It's just as easy for you to reprint it, attach it, and require a signature, an initial on the bottom, so that you don't have parents like these that say, I never went to the website, I never saw it.
I agree with you.
If you have problems like this, there's no denying the fact that you initialed each page and each policy.
I think that it's a learning experience because they just started the program in 2020. And this is probably the first experience that they've had because he's the first never expelled anybody else.
Case number 2149, Goodwin versus Philpott. All parties, please step forward.
Manuelita Goodwin is suing wedding planner Kayla Philpott for repayment of items purchased for Kayla's wedding.
Miss Philpott, how long have you known Miss Goodwin?
Since I was a child. I don't remember much of her when I was a child, but she remembers me as a baby.
Well, I don't know what she remembers. You were getting married. When? What was the date of the wedding?
May 6, 2021.
Where was the wedding supposed to be held?
It was going to be held in Turlock.
Is that a wedding
California.
venue?
Yes.
How many people were coming?
It ended up being around 25 people. It was kind of small.
How many people did you invite?
60.
But 25 came.
Yeah.
It was during the height of COVID. Tell me, when you contacted Miss Goodwin, you contacted her because you knew she was a wedding planner, right?
Yes.
And when did you contact her?
I believe I contacted her in January.
And at the time you contacted her, had you made any wedding plans at all?
Very little.
Okay. During the course of your wedding planning, she said she would help you.
Yes.
Prior to January 2021, when you contacted her, when was the last time you saw her?
I can't even remember.
Well, was it in 2020?
No.
2019?
No.
So you hadn't seen her in at least 2 or 3 years?
Yes.
How many times in that 2 or 3 year period did you communicate with her by text or by phone?
Never.
So the reason that you called her in January of 2021 was to assist you with your wedding?
Yes.
And she did?
Yes.
That's why we're here.
Yes.
She said she laid out a whole bunch of money for you in planning your wedding and purchasing things for your wedding, and she wants to be reimbursed for that. So when you called and asked her to help plan your wedding, what did you ask her to do for you?
I asked her to help me because I really didn't have a sense of direction of what to do for a wedding. And I asked her if she would pay for a decoration. And then I told her that I was getting my tax return and that I'd pay her for the decoration. And we started with that.
Started with that. Mm-hmm. How much money in total did you pay Miss Goodwin for her work in planning your wedding?
I paid her $50.
Well, don't you think that's ridiculous? It is ridiculous, right? You called her and engaged her to be a wedding planner for your wedding. She wasn't your best friend. She wasn't even a close friend. You hadn't spoken to her or seen her in years. So clearly you called her to do a job for you that was her profession, her vocation. And in addition to doing that, she bought you your wedding dress.
Yes.
How much was your wedding dress?
I ended up, we got a few dresses. The first one didn't work out, and I believe that one was $200. And then
who paid for that one?
She did.
So the first one didn't work out. Mm-hmm. That was $200.
Yes.
And it didn't work out. Why?
I didn't like the fit on it.
Didn't like it. Okay, but you bought it. Well, yeah. She bought it.
Yes.
And where is that dress now?
I gave it back, and we ended up returning it.
Okay, so you got your money back?
Yes.
Oh, great. Strike that out. And what about the next dress?
The next dress, it was from Amazon, and we didn't like the fit either, so we ended up returning that one. And that one was...
Who ordered that dress? You or the plaintiff?
I believe it was me.
Okay, and what did you finally end up with?
I ended up getting a dress from David's Bridal that I really liked.
How much was that?
I believe it was $500.
Who paid for that?
She did.
So far you've paid $50 for her services, and so far, at least what I know, just for one dress, it was $500. Don't you think you owe her compensation for her work?
Well, she told me that, she was really, really generous. She was giving, I did a lot of stuff, and I believe that I don't owe her because she offered to do that.
It sounds stupid to you. Okay, I know, it sounds stupid to you. How much did you lay out for her wedding? In the receipts that you have for me, how much did you lay out for her wedding?
$32,87.95.
And when you asked her to be reimbursed for that money, what did she tell you?
That she was going to pay some of it when she received her tax returns, actually her wife's tax returns, and also she was working overtime to pay me back. She also stated that she was going to be getting a judgment from a State Farm check that she would be making payments, and she did pay the $50 after she made a payment arrangement with me to pay $200 a month back, and she did make the first payment of $50, and from that point she didn't make any additional payments. So we did work together, Your Honor, to try to sell the items that were at her sister's home. I requested both Kayla and her wife at the time to sell the items. They're sitting in her sister's garage in Stockton, where I do not live. I did come down for 2 weeks to try to help sell those items.
Were any of those items sold?
Yes, they
were. Did you get any money back from those?
I did.
How much?
$106, and then I had to pay for shipping for those items.
How much did you pay for shipping?
$75. And the rest of the items are still in her sister's possession.
Okay, $32.26. How much did you pay for your wedding other than the plaintiff's participation?
$8,000.
Did you pay that?
My mom paid for the venue, and then I paid for the other things.
How much was the venue?
$4,000.
So you paid $4,000. You personally, and what about your wife?
Well, we share an account, so it was from both of us.
What about her $3,200? Just don't have it. Just didn't pay it. Okay. Anything else, Ms. Goodwin?
No.
$32.26. Judgment for the plaintiff.
This court is adjourned.
She told me that a lot of the stuff was gifts.
I don't have any more wedding woes.
She did a great job with the wedding.
She thought it was a gift.
She's really, really gifted at that.
Never gonna loan money to her again.
That was a relatively easy case. I think even the defendant acknowledged, besides just relying on the goodwill of the plaintiff, she had no real excuse to not pay her back, and
Case number 2075, Johnson versus McIntosh. All parties, please step forward.
Dominique Johnson is suing her children's uncle, Chris McIntosh, for a truck she never received.
Miss Johnson, this is your brother-in-law. I believe that, is it your husband or is he your ex-husband?
No, it's just my kid's father.
Okay. The father of your children is currently incarcerated?
Yes.
So he's not your brother-in-law, he's just the brother of the father of your children?
Yes.
Okay, you have 2 children?
I have 3.
Is he the uncle of all 3?
Yes.
Okay. There came a time when you were in need of a new vehicle or a different vehicle. Your car was giving you trouble.
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh, according to what I've read, has tried to maintain a relationship with his brother's children.
Yes.
Despite the fact that you no longer have a relationship with him.
Yes.
And according to what I'm putting together, you reached out to him or you were on the phone with him and told him you needed another car.
Yes.
And according to you, he said he had a car, a truck.
Yes.
That he would sell you for $2,700.
Yes, that he would personally bring to me.
And he did, in fact, bring you a truck.
He didn't.
So on what date did you buy it?
I don't
think. You know, you're coming to court today. You knew that this was the issue when you came here.
Yeah.
Not yeah, yes.
Dominique Johnson claims her children's uncle, Chris McIntosh, owes for the cost of a truck she never received.
According to you, he said he had a car, a truck.
Yes.
That he would sell you for $2,700.
Yes, that he would personally bring to me.
And he did, in fact, bring you a truck.
He didn't.
Never brought you a truck.
Never brought me the truck, never returned my money, anything.
Oh.
I even tried
Just a second.
Okay.
So you sent him the $2,700.
Yes.
What date?
June 21st of this year.
What happened to her $2,700?
Bought the truck there and then dropped it off.
What truck did you bring there?
2007 Suburban.
And where did you get that truck from?
I got it from an auction.
Okay, I'd like to see the paperwork.
I don't have the paperwork.
Well, that's unfortunate. Why wouldn't you bring the paperwork? It's only a couple of months ago.
Because the auction is every first Thursday. It's not the same person running the same auction. They don't have the same paperwork for the auction.
Well, if you had paperwork, you would have also have had a title for it.
Yeah, and I left it in the glove compartment box.
What's the name of the auction?
Towing.
Where are they located?
Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Sarah, would you look that up, please? She did send you the money.
Correct.
How did she send it to you?
Cash App.
Yep, which I have proof, Your Honor.
No, there's only one issue. She says that you never brought any truck. You say, well, you bought this truck at an auction. The auction is every Thursday?
Every first Thursday of the month.
First Thursday. So on what date did you buy it?
I don't
think. You know, you're coming to court today. You knew that this was the issue when you came here.
Yeah.
Not yeah, yes. So what date was it that you bought the truck? That you have no paperwork
Thursday.
for at all?
Thursday.
Which Thursday?
What month was that I bought you the truck? I really don't know. Like, I'm being so serious right now, like.
Honestly, if I could speak, it was June 21st I sent him the money. June 21st was when he was supposed to bring the truck to me. He never bought the truck. Then he stated to me that he sold the truck and that he had another one that was less, and I have that truck as well. This was the first truck initially I was supposed to get.
Did he ever bring you any truck?
No, not at all.
Do you have any phone messages?
I do.
I'd like to see them, please.
And towing. It's a towing and auction house.
Okay, say when they have auctions?
It doesn't list it on their website, but I could try and see.
It's a lot of them, honestly, a lot of messages.
I have those dates of the auction. They list their past auctions. There was one May 5th of this year, June 5th of this year, July 2nd, August 6th, and September 3rd of this year.
June
all
what?
the most recent. June 5th. And I actually have a list of every car that was included in that June 5th auction. So if you give me the make and model, I could see if it was included in that auction on June 5th.
You went in June for the auction or in July?
Yeah, June 5th.
He said a 2007 Yukon, right?
No, Suburban.
2007 Suburban.
There was actually two different trucks that...
Well, that's the one he said he bought.
The only car from 2007 at the June 5th auction was a 2007 Nissan Murano.
Nissan Murano. It wasn't a Nissan Murano. That was the only one that was sold in June 2007.
It was sold in 2007, but I bought a 07 Tahoe Suburban.
I understand that.
From
But you
that
say you
auction
bought it
place,
in
so-
June, and they list on the website everything that they sold in the June auction. Am I understanding that
Yes.
right, Sarah?
Yes.
They list all the cars that they sold in the June auction. And the only car that they sold that was a 2007 was a Merino. He says, and I will be leaving in about an hour or two after I get the Venmo. Would you please just put where you start to ask for your money back because you didn't get the truck? That's what I want to see. I want my money back because you didn't bring me the truck.
There was no Chevy Tahoe 2007 at the July 2nd auction.
Either.
And a lot of the vehicles, a select few, are above $1,500, and that's for newer models. Everything else is under $950.
Thank you. There was no such car either in June or July.
No.
Okay. That's so interesting that they have that information on a website. Ms. Johnson, you can't just give me your phone and expect me to go through pages.
apologize.
All I want, you said you had something indicating that you told him you wanted your money back because you didn't get a truck.
Okay.
So far, there's no evidence that he bought you a truck from the place that he said he bought you a truck.
Yep. Here's the part where I'm asking for the money back. He doesn't have proof that he even bought the truck.
No, there is no proof that he bought the truck.
He never bought the truck. Okay, so starting from here, this is me asking if he want to just cash at me back my money because he never showed up.
Read it to me.
Oh, okay. It says, do you want to just cash at me back the whole $2,700? Because all this waiting isn't necessary. It's just a few taps to cash at me back my money. We can say forget the whole thing because now this isn't sitting well with me. This was supposed to be easy. I don't have my truck or my money. Like, how does that work? And then I offered to just go down there and get it myself. And then he said that there was no place. I said, okay, but how do I get it home with no place? So this whole time he was kind of dragging me on. And then this is the picture of another truck that he sent me.
That's a picture of him.
Yeah, he's posing in front of the truck, the second truck he supposedly had bought for me.
At the auction, yeah. He just told me he bought the second truck at an auction. There's no indication that that auction house where he said he bought it sold a truck that he said that he bought, either in June or July. Got that right?
Yes.
Okay, I don't have to waste any more time. You have no paperwork, Mr. McIntosh, that you bought this truck. You have no proof at all that you brought this phantom truck to her house. Why would she be asking for her money back?
Because I bought her a truck and I dropped it off in front of her house, left her the paperwork saying what's wrong with the truck in the truck. She says that she didn't want it, so I said my finder's fee was only like $400, and that's $200 for just a bus ticket to get there. She can sell the truck and get her money back. That's what I told her.
$2,700, judgment for the plaintiff. Thank you very much.
This court is adjourned.
I hope this don't affect the relationship with my nieces and nephew.
I'm not really here to bad talk anybody. I just wanted, my money back.
I left it there with the papers and the receipts.
Right is right, wrong is wrong.
She said she didn't want it. I told her she can sell it back, get her money back.
I feel like he kind of screwed it up in a way.
I just want to be a good uncle all the time.
I love when a website is so meticulous and gives us all the evidence that we need. This website had a very well planned out photos.
Towing company.
Towing and auctioneer house had every single auction, every car that was sold, photos, the username of the person who purchased it, and the price of the vehicle.
I can't imagine a company like that doing that voluntarily. And it has to be by law to be licensed in order to avoid stolen cars being auctioned off. Has to be very smart.
Yeah, good way to track the evidence.
For rent and the cost of 2 cats.
Court come to order. All rise.
Have a seat, everyone.
Case 2170, Jolie versus Calderon Nepomuceno.
Thank you. You're welcome. Oh, my goodness. Calderon.
Hello.
What's your first name?
Amante.
Amante.
Yeah.
Good. It's much easier than your last name for me to pronounce. Mr. Giglio, this roughly is what the case is about. You and Miss Calderon were in a relationship for a period of time. You decided to take an apartment. You were both on the lease. So far, correct?
Correct.
Your arrangement with Miss Calderon, which seems to be consistent in both your complaint and your answer, is that you had a much better paying job. She was going to provide the food and some other stuff for the house, and you were going to be covering the rent when you lived together, which you did.
Correct.
There came a time when Armante, who was a friend of yours, came to live with you. According to you, he was going to help out with the rent.
Correct.
He came, he lived with you, he helped out with the rent for maybe a period of time, and then he helped himself to your girlfriend.
Correct.
Now they're a couple. When you were no longer a couple, with Miss Calderon, she stayed in the apartment for a period of time, but then they both left.
Correct.
And you're suing both of them for rent and for the return of 2 cats that they took when they left. You claim the cats are yours.
That's correct.
That's what the case is about. And some cat expenses in the event that I let them keep the cat. Cats. 2 cats. So when did you and Miss Calderon sign a lease together?
We signed the lease together at the end of July with the landlord present.
July of 2022?
July of 2021. Correct.
And it was for a year?
Correct.
And you had a job working for whom, sir?
I worked for a company called Steris.
What do they do?
They provide medical equipment to hospitals all over the world.
How long have you been working for them?
I'm going to have 8 years under my belt this year.
And when you moved into the apartment in July of 2021, what kind of work was Miss Calderon doing?
At the time, she was working at I want to say an animal hotel.
It was a pet daycare boarding facility.
Okay. Were you an hourly employee?
I was an hourly employee.
And I am correct that when you moved in July, your arrangement was that you were going to pay the rent.
That was
the arrangement.
Correct.
When did Armante come to live with you?
About August to...
That's
right.
correct.
Shh.
He
just...
Amante was going to be our 3rd roommate.
You mean 1, 2, 3?
Correct.
Well, you're not roommates, really. You and the defendant, Miss Calderon, were not roommates. You shared a room.
We shared a room and...
And Armante was going to live where?
In another room.
And what was your arrangement with Armante with regard to paying rent?
We would split the rent 3 ways.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And how much was your share of the rent?
I would say approximately $927.
How long did you live there?
I was there when they signed the lease. I watched it all happen when they signed the lease. I came in, they signed everything.
Well, you didn't sign the lease.
I did not.
But you were there from the beginning?
Yes.
And it was your agreement with the plaintiff that you would pay 1/3 of the rent?
Yes.
Great.
We asked the landlord
Okay,
to.
so, hey, try not to hold each other's hands. Let's do the coochie someplace else. So you agreed with the plaintiff that despite the fact that you were not on the lease, you were going to assume the responsibility of 1/3 of the rent, $927.
Yes.
So you moved in July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. You left in April?
Yeah.
So you were there for 9 months?
Yes.
Did you pay rent for the 9 months?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that correct?
He paid rent for about the 7.5 months.
Okay. And then you left?
Yes.
Why did you leave?
I decided to leave because he decided to go to another place he was offered. So
what do you mean he decided to go to another place?
He got a place from his grandparents in another city. So I couldn't hold down the rent with her. So I decided to leave to save money and go back to my parents' house.
Now, Mr. Jalil, you see, you don't make up a story like that, like he just told me. A lot of that has the ring of truth to it. Where are you living now?
My grandparents' house in an in-law unit.
So when did you tell them that you were going to a different place?
In March.
When did you leave?
I left in July.
Did you let him know that you were staying until the end of the lease?
I
what?
I discussed with them that I would be leaving, but I would stick around to help them find either a different location or even suggesting that we all went back to our respected families just to, call it.
Mr. Jalil, this isn't working for you. I have to tell you something, sir. This case is not working for you at all. And it's only because Mr. Ramonte is very direct with me that you're suing them for $10,000. Where does that come from in your mind? Your agreement with her was you were going to pay the rent. You were never out of pocket. Your agreement was you were going to pay the rent. He paid his rent when he was there. He paid his 1/3. You then told them you were leaving. That's a whole different story than what you wrote in your complaint, Mr. Giulio. Do you understand?
Correct.
It's a whole different story. So, at best, Armante would owe you for 3 months' rent if they just left. But you told them that you were leaving. Now, when did you find out that they were a couple?
I found out at the end of April.
Were you all living together?
Yes.
So you just had 2 months left to the lease. So he was paying you, he paid you in March, you had May, June, you signed the lease in July, so it was over at the end of June, June 30th.
It would have been over at the end of July, Your Honor.
Well, she doesn't owe you any money for rent. At most, he owes you 2 months' rent. Tell me why you left.
My job doesn't pay that well, so I decided to go back to my parents' house.
When you took this apartment, this expensive apartment that was almost $3,000 a month rent, had you had a discussion with Armante about moving in with you before?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Jalil, I'm reading your complaint because something wasn't registering right with me. You say you moved into the apartment together in August of 2021. Then you go through a whole bunch of stuff about a cat and then another adopted cat. You said in October we adopted a second cat. Around this same time, a third roommate moved in to shoulder some of the rent. Well, that's not true. He moved in right at the beginning.
And that was...
That was what?
That was...
a mistake.
That was a mistake.
Okay. But Armante acknowledges that he agreed right at the beginning. He volunteered the fact that he was there at the lease signing because it was agreed at the lease signing that he was going to pay a third of the rent. So, sir, you owe him rent as long as you show me that you've paid the rent. You moved out in July?
Yes.
And you paid your rent through July, or were you evicted?
No, I paid my rent in July.
Through July?
Yes.
Okay. 1854. Armante, you owe him $1,854. That's for 2 months' rent. Got it?
Okay.
I'm not subtracting anything because you stole his girlfriend.
That's fair.
What were you requesting when you filed your small claims case?
Either the return of both cats or $5,000.
That's not happening for you, Mr. Jalil.
And later today,
There were restrictions put on the space.
No.
You have to pay attention.
Okay.
Sir, because what I'm suggesting is really in your favor.
Oh, okay. Let me. Okay.
Kamar Jalil claims his former roommates, Katie Calderon and Amante Nepomuceno, are wrongfully keeping his cats and owe him rent money.
Now let's deal with the issue with the cats. She doesn't owe you any rent. That was not your agreement with her. You moved out in July. August, September, October, November, December. 5 months ago, she's had both cats, right?
Correct.
She says they're her cats. When did you first file a small claims case?
September of 2022.
What were you requesting when you filed your small claims case? Be careful.
I was requesting either the return of both cats or $5,000, which was the accumulated expense of not just the cats, but also the expenses of her dogs as well. So any animal expenses for the time.
That's not happening for you, Mr. Jalil. When the cats were either registered or went to the vet, whose name is on the sheet as owner?
I believe it was Ms. Calderon.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And she owns the cats, and she's had them for the last 5 months. I suggest that you go and adopt 2 more if you want some more cats. Do you understand?
Yes.
You were living together as a couple. However, your friend Armante has to pay you for the couple of months' rent that he didn't because he says, not you, he volunteered that that was your agreement from the very beginning. So he owes you $1,854. We're finished. Thank you very much.
This court is adjourned.
I think he's just kind of butthurt that I moved on.
At least now I can put everything behind me and say that I did try.
I didn't think it would escalate this far.
All you can do in a situation like this is just you learn from it and you move on.
The heart wants what the heart wants.
This is what it is. It's life.
I find fascinating, Sarah, that people will write and or be assisted in writing a complaint and an answer, but they read it over. This man is an intelligent man. He has a serious job for 8 years. First of all, he was suing for $10,000. Come up with that money. $5,000 for the cat's expenses, ridiculous. But his complaint had really nothing to, even the timeline.
As your clerk, I know that is a pet peeve of yours when
I don't understand
they
it.
don't
You know,
match up.
if you're going to tell a lie,
At least tell a consistent lie. I think the right thing happened. I think the defendant friend admitted himself that he owed the rent, and that was great, even though he probably should have just kept his mouth shut.
And not said, I was there when the lease was signed. This was always our agreement.
Yeah.
I was going to be the
but
third
he was
roommate.
honest, which we always appreciate. And so I think the right thing.
So
I think he needs to, like you say, put a period, move on.
Move on. Anyway, all happy, and they look happy. They couldn't keep their hands off each other.
Case 2185, Francis versus Morris. All parties, please step forward.
Danielle and Michael Francis are suing their former tenant, Anthony Morris, for property damage and loss of income.
Miss Francis?
Yes, ma'am.
Who is this?
It's my husband.
Well, this has to do with the ownership of a home. Do you both own the home, or just did you inherit the home?
It doesn't have to do with ownership of the home. It's a case about property damage.
I understand that.
Yes, ma'am.
But somebody owns the home. Who owns the home is
I
the
do.
question. Not your husband.
Correct.
Have a seat. Let's not confuse it. Miss Francis, you had a brother.
Yes, ma'am.
Whose name was?
Julius.
How old was he?
My brother was 38.
And your brother owned a home?
Yes.
How long did your brother own this home?
He just purchased a home in 2017.
Do you know how much he paid for it?
About $123,000.
Was there a mortgage on the house?
Yes, ma'am.
How much is left on the mortgage?
$110,000 now.
Do you know how much the house is worth?
Yes, ma'am.
How
It's
much?
worth $213,000 now.
So almost double.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, your brother passed away when?
June of 2020.
From what?
Pancreatic cancer.
So it was relatively fast.
Yes, it was. He was actually diagnosed in 2019. So in early 2019, I became his caregiver, taking him back and forth to the doctor and chemo visits, as well as my husband.
Okay. Now, Mr. Morris,
Yes, ma'am.
you had been a roommate of Julius.
That is correct.
For how long?
I moved into the house on October 19th, 2019.
And you paid rent.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, when Julius got sick, according to what I read, you never moved into the house with Julius. You just took him to where he needed to be. Is that correct? You lived with your husband.
Yes, ma'am.
You lived with your husband, and you came as needed to take your brother to medical appointments, et cetera. You lived in the house with him.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Partially.
What's not partially?
At the end of my brother's illness, I moved in with him because
How much before?
I would say March of 2020.
So for a couple of months, towards the end, you moved in, but during the course of the year, you lived with your husband and you lived in the house with
Yes,
Julius. And when you were living in the house with Julius, did you give any assistance to him in any way?
Yes, ma'am. I took him to the hospital several times. I cooked for him, and I pretty much did the chores and ran the errands for him.
Did you know him before you moved into the house?
I did not.
After Julius passed away, you inherited the house.
Yes, ma'am.
Did he have a will?
Yes, ma'am.
And the will specifically gave you the house?
Yes, ma'am.
And you and the defendant determined that he would remain a tenant in June of 2020. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
There came a time when you moved out, Mr. Morris.
Yes, that's correct.
And what month and year did you move out?
June 1st, I believe, 2022. Correct.
And what was the reason that you moved out?
I moved out because the rent had went up for a second time.
What was it when you were living with Julius?
$650.
And then when Miss Francis inherited the house, did she modify the rent?
She did.
In what month?
I'm not specifically, I can't answer that question.
What did she raise the rent to?
Approximately $1,200.
Was that the first increase?
That was correct.
How long did that increase stay in place?
That had to be for a year. That was the term of that lease.
And what happened after the year?
She raised the rent again.
To what?
Well, that's when I didn't accept that lease.
What did she ask?
$1,575.
She wanted $1,575.
Yes, ma'am.
And you determined that that was too much rent
did.
for you.
I did.
So you gave notice you were leaving.
I did.
She's going to show me what she considers $5,000 worth of damage to the house. I want to see it.
Yes, ma'am.
Now I want you to show me what damage you are ascribing to him from the house.
Okay, I have the pictures here, Your Honor.
Okie dokie.
Danielle and Michael Francis claim their former tenant, Anthony Morris, damaged their property while renting from them.
When did you give notice you were leaving?
30 days before June 1st.
Okay. And when was the lease up?
June 1st, it would expire.
Now, after your brother passed away and you inherited the house, did you maintain the same rent that he was paying to your brother?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So when did you raise his rent and to what amount?
I raised the rent in November.
Okay.
Of 2021.
To what?
To $14.95.
That was the first time you raised his rent?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you knew what his rent was when he was living with your brother?
Correct.
And how much was his rent when he was living with your brother?
It was $625.
So, in effect, you increased his rent a little over 200%.
Yes, ma'am, Your Honor.
Mm-hmm.
Can I explain the reason to that?
No, it's irrelevant what the reason was.
Okay.
He was paying rent of $625. You raised it to $1,500. Now, at the end of that term, were you going to raise his rent again?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
To what?
It was going to be an $80 increase to $1,575.
Now, during that 2-month period that you lived in the house, you had no issue with regard to the way Mr. Morris maintained the house while you were living there with your brother. And that fact is buttressed by the fact that you maintained him as a tenant, right?
Correct.
Okay, so you saw the way he maintained the house, and having seen that, you continued him as a tenant.
Correct.
And you raised his rent substantially, and he paid that rent.
Correct.
And he paid that rent sufficiently so that you were prepared to re-rent him the house, but you just wanted a little more money.
Correct.
Correct. Now he moves out on June 1st of this year. Mm-hmm. And now you say that he caused almost $5,000 worth of damage. And because he had damage, you lost income because you couldn't re-rent the house.
Correct.
You moved out in June of 2020.
Yes, ma'am.
You have a new tenant in the house.
Yes, ma'am, I do now.
And how much rent is she paying?
She is paying $2,200 a month.
And when did her lease start?
Her lease started in September.
So your premises was not rented for 2 months.
Correct.
And when it was rented, from the 2-year period of time between your brother's death and your re-renting the house, the rent went from $625 to $2,200.
Yes, ma'am.
Doesn't sound like you're losing any money.
Well, there's
just a second.
Okay.
Doesn't sound like you're losing any money. So I'm not interested in the loss of income that you had. You had no loss of income. Anybody who lives in a house can't rent from June 1st. House has to be painted, normal wear and tear. You may have to redo carpeting. That's the normal wear and tear. Had to be done because that's what you do when you want to get $2,200 rent from somebody for a house. You have to paint it up. You have to freshen it up. You have to do all of those things. So what I want to see from you are photographs of what, other than cleaning out the house, which Mr. Morris acknowledges for whatever reason there was stuff left in the house. Correct, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
That belonged to you.
Yes, ma'am.
And that you didn't clean out.
I did not.
Now, you left on June 1st, and I'm telling her that she's going to show me what she considers $5,000 worth of damage to the house. I want to see it.
Yes, ma'am.
You agree that you left some stuff in the house. She probably has a bill for cleaning out some of that stuff. That she's entitled to. Now I want you to show me what damage you are ascribing to him from the house.
Okay. I have the pictures here, Your Honor.
Okie dokie.
Also, can I present in evidence what the room that the defendant rented out, what it looked like prior to the damages?
No, I don't see any damages. I see mess.
There's pictures in there, Your Honor.
I'm looking.
The damages. The carpet was damaged very badly. He messed up my mattress in my second bedroom. The doors was damaged. He actually changed the lock on the second bedroom door and the master bedroom door without my
You see all this
knowledge.
stuff, sir? Shh,
Yes,
just a
ma'am.
sec. This is all your junk, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you should have a substantial bill for cleaning and getting rid of this.
Yes.
I'd like to see it.
Here you go.
So you paid $760 to clean out the house.
Yes, ma'am.
Make it move in clean.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what you're entitled to, Miss Francis. $760. You can't leave a place like that.
Also, Your Honor, I had other damages as well. My microwave was broken.
I don't know who broke that, and you don't know.
I know it was working when he was there.
May have been working, may have been not working.
Everything was in top-notch condition, from appliances to flooring, when Mr. Morris was at the house. So he broke my microwave.
Fix it.
I have fixed it, and I'm asking for the cost of a replacement for a new one.
No, wait.
Why not?
Because I'm not convinced, madam, that somebody who, according to you, helped you with your brother, was there and supportive for the last year of his life. He certainly left a mess, which you're not supposed to do, sir.
I understand.
You're not supposed to leave a mess. And this is clearly a mess. And there's no question in my mind that you left this mess because she was quadrupling your rent. But to her, this is a business. And she's not living there with her husband. This has now become a business investment. Yeah. Her investment increased in value. It was really Julius's investment, but it increased in real estate value. And instead of seeing $600 a month, which probably doesn't cover the taxes and mortgage, she now has a profit because she's now getting $2,200 a month from somebody, and that covers, of course, her mortgage and whatever taxes they are. You were annoyed? You're still not allowed to leave a place like this. $760, judgment for the plaintiff. We're done.
Court is adjourned.
It's kind of upsetting because the defendant really trashed my brother's house, given that we considered him like family.
I was like family with them. I took care of the brother for a long period of time. I wouldn't have left the house like that.
And for him to turn around and do this and cause all those damages and then get off scot-free, it's heartbreaking.
Number one, there were no damages.
You know what? Nothing good ever comes to someone who does people like this.
Money does change people, and so you have to be careful.
Be careful who you rent to.
So I just did some research on the home while we were out there, and I found some interesting information just based on some of the plaintiff's claims. So I did find that the house was sold to the brother in 2017 for $123,000. But the plaintiff listed the home for rent for the first time July 22nd for $2,300 listed for rent when she became the owner.
And he moved out in June, beginning of June.
So,
all rise.
Have a seat, please.
Hello, Judge. Case 2159, Baker versus Escobar.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This case involves an automobile accident. Ms. Baker, you are seeking $10,000 from Mr. Escobar, who you claim caused the accident and you a lot of grief.